Did you have a phone?
Okay.
I could sit here and get
Yes, I did.
as much as possible.
I don't know. I don't know if Matthew put his on. Matthew's on there for a while.
If I were going to play,
My dear.
How's it going? Good. I'm great. You're staying for this, yeah? Oh, okay. I'm trying to find the back.
Yeah, is he coming?
Just before the
darling,
It's me, Are
darling.
you sitting or are you busy?
I really have to leave, and then I'm gonna come sit with you.
Great.
This is my uncle, and so this is Sarah's parents.
Oh, hi. How are you? Nice to meet you.
I'm Eric. Great to meet you.
Pleasure.
He's also one of my best friends and soulmates, and I didn't know he was coming tonight.
Surprise in. Hello.
Hi. I forgot I didn't get your name.
Ansel.
Ansel. A-N.
A-N-S-E-L-L. 2 L's. And where you up from?
From Florida.
Yeah, kind of.
Sunshine.
Like, kind of.
We're up from the sunshine.
I thought I'd ask. How long are you here?
Till tomorrow.
Do you like New York?
We love New York.
Oh, do you?
We love it.
Are you original Floridians or
No, I'm in Ohio. Past New Jersey.
where?
Lincoln Park, a little town in North Jersey. 20 minutes from right here.
Oh yeah, yeah. Did you by chance see? I don't know if it's played down there, but Jim Jarmusch's film Patterson.
No.
It's so beautiful. It's a poem of a movie. It's a little light in places, but it's just visually very beautiful. It has Adam Driver, who's great. You know, he's terrific. But I haven't thought of Patterson since we went on an inauguration. So I kind of go.
But the movie takes place in Patterson.
It's all in Patterson. His name is Patterson. It's just poems about Patterson.
Kind of monomaniacal there, I think.
Yeah. There are a lot of from Patterson.
Where are you sitting?
I don't know. I threw my purse here. Oh. I can. Maybe is somebody sitting right there?
I think Sarah's sitting
Just back.
You know, when you told me to move back here, let me get you another chair.
Yeah, I'll just be right behind you.
Ryan's got a chair.
I'm sure correct if you would.
Nice little gathering. More people coming. Yeah. I was at the lodge. It's lodge for binary stuff. It was a much larger room. It was a nice gathering. But I like this one. This one's it's a wonderful book. So I love this book.
I didn't know she had 3 lives too. You have 3 lives on 10 Greenwich.
Yeah.
I mean, the benches are still out, it's back, right? Yeah.
She was thinking about some women and then they sold it to this wonderful guy Toby and he.
Are you in publishing?
No, I'm not. I'm in hotel. Where is that?
Is there
No, that's a. I'm going to look in this break late here.
where you going?
I'm going to Trieste and then down to Croatia
Oh,
and then
no.
back to Venice.
Are you going to stop in? Are you going to be in the area? Are you going to get down to Bosnia? That's a good one. Are you going to get down to Sarajevo?
No, we're going to stay right on the coast. It's my sister's 60th
So down
birthday.
around Split in that
Yeah,
area.
we're actually staying in Trowbridge.
Gorgeous area.
Yeah, I'm hoping for a morning swim every day. That's my idea of paradise. It was her birthday, and this is where she wanted to go. She could be in Budapest and Prague.
You know, from there up to Sarajevo, it's not a long. Sarajevo, this is amazing. A little bit war torn and all that, but it's amazing.
Well, the executive housekeeper at the hotel is from Montenegro.
Oh, okay.
I'm not in the drive, although I am in the driver's seat because they won't drive. I'm not in that.
You're not metaphorically in the
Right.
driver's seat.
I'm driving where I'm told.
That's right. Right. Makes a decision making. I know you're much easier.
Stairs too heavy much for this. And are you in New York frequently? Sarah's here, so I guess you come up.
Oh, we come up a couple times a year, 2-3 times
Less
a year.
though, because I'm like cutting back.
Of course, she comes down to Florida. So you get to see her more than a lot of girls get to see their grown children. She'll be down at the end of the month, of course, because she can do Florida for the tour. And she's reading at our local library, which is a beautiful library. And then she's coming back down in August to work on a new book. So you get to see her again.
Good time to get out of New York.
Yeah,
Although it's not a great time to go to Florida. Where?
Largo, West Coast, yeah, Tampa Bay area. So we're right on the Gulf, about 10 minutes from the Gulf. It's nice.
I have a morning swim almost every day, I suppose.
Good, but we don't. Because we live there.
Yeah, I don't go to the Statue of Liberty. They were just on
She did it. No good. She's like,
and the mayor has initiated, I think the governor to put more ferries in the city because now there are some back and forth. They're quite expensive. Like the ferry to Jersey is like $12.50 trains to Ruck. So there's no. So, but there's it's all there. So they were only made
Mobile, I guess.
but there's a canal across the Florida. So they're trying to bring them across. So you come in off the Gulf, go through the village. The first one got miles in one. They had to
Then across Florida Barge Canal. I thought that was further north. It wouldn't be like the children. No, they stopped it. They were
I could obviously go smaller.
When was it?
Oh, 40 years ago. They started it even earlier than that. But they killed it. When I moved to Florida in 76, they'd already stopped working on the strike. Across Florida Barge Canal. Great story.
It is a good.
Yeah, but it's Florida. We have a lot of stories.
It's a very strange place from my understanding.
It's a wonderful place because there are strange people and the characters.
You know what, Billy? When you do the presentation,
Yeah.
you want to stand up.
Oh, and face you? It makes sense.
No, but just stand close to the chair because most of the time I use it like that. You know, I get your shoulders. If you step back, look.
Ah, got you. Okay.
Limestone. Still a shell.
My mom just
because my mom, like,
You can't really dig out everything. Really? You drive down the road and take a look at it. Yeah, take a look at it. Really? Mostly in the springtime, because that's the rainy season and you become very happy. Well, very motivated.
As the sapphire.
Very motivated. Very motivated, yeah. So you'll see, every now and then you'll see him crossing the road. What are you looking for, Aaron? Yeah, Worcester. Cleveland. You didn't need that.
I was in trouble, Aaron.
I'm just rearranging all of the Callie Jackson to my side.
I use my Jedi mind power. You don't need that shit. You don't need that shit. The chair belongs here.
I didn't want to be handled.
Where Ellie doesn't know where he's sitting.
Oh no, I was going to say I didn't see pictures. haven't seen Rachel in a long time. Where is she? Oh, Rachel, there you are. Hello.
So it's a triumvirate. You're
What are you at?
female You gotta bring them with you.
So you're supposed to say, can you see a theme? How's that? Do you want me to email it? Or do you want me
I don't even do the full bios one right I can't.
and your address?
It's a big broad.
Okay, great. Yeah. I forgot your name.
I'm Eric.
Eric, I think I met you guys years ago. You were here for a visit, so I forgot. Okay, Vanessa, well, I look forward to that. We met years ago when you were here for a visit once, because I work with Sarah in the kids area and kids events, and the staff photographer. So I know she sent photos that I must have taken at some point. The goats were here. We had the goats. And when I did a lot of the Storytime puppet show things, where yeah, that was always fun to document those. It was fun. So anyway, this is great. I knew there'd be a good turnout. So there's a fellow who was in an essay group that we had going together. And I don't remember his name, but he's here with Rachel. Might know his name. We did a lot of good books and stuff together when we were doing essay book clubs, and that was good. That was fun. And when did you guys get in?
Got in today.
Today? Oh, that's great. So, obviously, you heard a lot of United jokes, I guess, while you were...
There were some. We flew Delta, so
Oh, good for you.
yeah.
Yeah, Delta is good to Florida. Well, you know, yeah, that's what makes you sad. Is like all those people are going, oh my God, what are you doing? You know, if one of them had stood up, somebody would have, said, you know, get your you're off too, or you know, whatever. It would have been interesting if everybody had stood up. But
Yeah, but they posted it. They posted the video.
yeah.
And by the way, United stock took a dump.
Because it went up $1.25 billion or some crazy number.
Well, you know,
But their
the guy
response
had
was
it.
so
The
independent.
guy had it.
Yeah.
So why are you paying me out?
Right. They went and did a random thing. They said, okay, nobody's going to volunteer, then we're going to randomly choose. And the first 3 people were like grumpy about it. He's like, I'm a physician. I can be back here in the morning. I'm sorry, I'm not going. And then rather than do something different, like let's find a different person.
He was a doctor?
But he was a doctor. That's what it said. I mean, but I mean, it was what?
Instead of asking for volunteers,
They did, and they asked for volunteers. They asked for volunteers, but no one would volunteer. They first they said 400 and a ticket and hotel, and then they said 800. No one would still volunteer. And they said, okay, we're going to pick randomly pick 4 people. I know, for $800, I would have done
Every
it.
time, if it's at all possible, they say we're looking for volunteers.
So good evening, everybody. Welcome to McNally Jackson. It's so nice to have you guys here. Thank you so much for joining us. Before we get started, McNally Jackson has started a fund to help people and their families in the midst of the deportation crisis. If you're interested in finding out about it and donating, you may look it up at our website. Tonight we have a very special guest and ex-employee and a birthday. How about that? Sarah Gerard follows her breakout novel, Binary Star, with this dynamic essay collection, Sunshine State, which explores Florida as a microcosm of the most pressing economic and environmental perils haunting our society. It was listed as one of the most anticipated books of 2017 in the Chicago Tribune, BuzzFeed, The Millions, and the Huffington Post. Garth Greenwell says, quote, "These large-hearted, meticulous essays offer an uncanny x-ray of our national psyche." Sarah Gerard's writing has appeared in the New York Times, Granta, New York Magazine, the Paris Review Daily, the LA Review of Books, Book Forum, Vice, and Hazlitt. She will be joined tonight by Amy Gall, whose birthday it is. Should we get Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Amy. Happy birthday to you. That's all right. Amy's writing has appeared in Tin House, Brooklyn Magazine, and the Los Angeles Review of Books. Please make our guests feel very welcome.
Yes, I have it. Is it okay that I'm sitting? I know that some of you guys can't actually see my face right now. Should I stand? Maybe I'll stand and then Amy and I can.
Yes.
Yeah.
Stand. Okay.
Somebody will help you with that.
No, it's good. I got it, Mom.
I got you.
Okay. Yeah, this is
She's
better.
got the grown-up
This is
role there.
Your podium.
Yeah. This is so great. Thank you. This is perfect. Okay. Hi, this is so special. This is such a homecoming for me. McNally Jackson was really my home for 3.5 years, right after I moved back to New York, and it's where I met so many people that are here tonight, and even I learned about presses like $2 Radio, which published my first book, because I worked in a bookstore. So it's really so special that I'm doing this here tonight, and with my dear friend Amy Gall. So this is my second book, Sunshine State. It's a collection of essays that spans form and several topics, including domestic violence, homelessness, marginal religion, female friendship, sexual assault, death, all that stuff. Death, birth. But yeah, it's truly, I think it's not to disparage my first book, but I think it's a more mature book than my first one, so I'm really glad to be launching it here tonight. Anyway, I'm going to read just from 2 essays. The first is BFF, which was published as a chapbook in 2015, but which I revised for this book, and it tells it's an autopsy of a 17-year really intense friendship with a woman that I no longer speak to. So I'm just going to read the first, as the hook. So I'm just going to read the first, I'll read 10 minutes from this and then 10 minutes from another essay. I'll begin our story with that afternoon. We hadn't spoken for a year, like so many years when we didn't speak, when you pulled up next to me on my walk to work and offered me a ride. I climbed into the passenger seat of your Dodge Omni, knowing I'd begun another cycle and still another, feeling that I'd been tricked again, that I should have refused. You caught me in a moment of not knowing. If I start there, I should say that by this time we'd already gotten the tattoos that linked our right and left hips together into a single message, forever and ever. And I should say that, at a glance, my text appeared to spell beaver. Too perfect that yours bore the autonomous word while mine was dependent. Do you know mine is covered up? I hope yours remains. I hope you still see it in the mirror and it surprises you some mornings in your half-sleep. You're the only woman I've loved this way, enough to want to hurt you. I'm reminded of your first tattoo on your back, tramp stamp, so Florida. You told me you orgasmed while getting it, your nerve endings so close to the surface of your skin. Like many things you told me, I don't know if it's true. Even 20 years after we met, I can't tell when you're lying, but have learned to assume you often are. I've learned to hope you are sometimes. Our friendship was a sticky web. Our friendship was a black box. Our friendship was a swamp full of cottonmouths. Another of your tattoos, an alligator eating up your left arm. Is it left, like mine, or right? Are we mirrors even now? The tattoo covers another, some text you got when I got my text. Mine reads, resilient in the clutch of darkness. Yours? Your blues ain't like my blues. Whose pain is deeper? Who wins? By the way, my parents are here tonight, and they're basically the stars of this book, so I want to give them a round of applause really quick. Okay. I have to start over, like we started over so many times, with the call you made in our 19th summer. We hadn't spoken for a year. I went away to college in New York, you stayed in Florida. You didn't go to school. Nobody in your family went to school. If I could quantify what came between us, the cost of tuition. If I could quantify what came between us, the cost of your mother's one-bedroom rent subtracted from my parents' four-bedroom house in a gated neighborhood. If I could quantify what came between us, the cost of diapers, formula, hospital bills. The last time we spoke before this, we planned to get coffee and you never called me back. You never showed. You disappeared. That day, I wore a pink slip I'd turned into a dress, copycatting your style, which has always been effortless. You shinier, you prettier, you taller, you thinner, more popular. In middle school, you had friends and I had you. You made it so that you were my only friend. Don't think I didn't know. Was it really so important so often to know you were first? You were first. It's stupid I'm still mad at you for this. It's stupid I'm even still mad at you for things you did when we were 10. When you told me you had gone on a date with my boyfriend, he was hardly my boyfriend. And what was I wearing on the day you finally called, a full year later, linking summer to summer? I don't know now. But I was driving that same car some 1,000 miles away from you when you asked me to spell your daughter's name. I got it wrong and you laughed. Wasn't I supposed to be an English major? Yes, but I had never heard that name. It's unusual, like yours. It means pure in the language of your ancestors. In another, it means sea, like the Gulf we grew up swimming in together. The many, many ways were the same. Blue eyes, brown hair, small breasts, freckles, and the moles on our bellies, which we called the moon and stars. Your daughter has your eyes. Your body. You were always biting your fingernails. Your fingers are long and thin, like your arms, like your legs, like your nose. Do you remember saying my nose was a ski slope? You traced your finger down, and it leapt into the air, and you laughed your loud, big-mouth laugh. Your body. Years later, you asked me why I didn't tell you that you were too good for stripping. I didn't know you wanted me to tell you. My body. Do you remember saying that my shoulders were broad, that I couldn't wear the tank top we just bought together, two of the same, and how I didn't wear it? But you did. My body. Or the afternoon when you got on my bus without permission and we walked home through a tornado. I wore a black flowered skirt with a matching tank top and leather platforms. We took shelter in the covered walkway of a Baptist church and shivered and laughed as the rain painted everything white. Your body. Or the funny face you made by pinching your nose closed and inhaling hard, crossing your eyes. Or the face you made when I borrowed your pants and laughed so hard I wet them in the back of our friend's dad's car coming back from an 8th grade party. Yours. You were nearly paralyzed giving birth the first time. You didn't want an epidural, but the nurse convinced you and then botched the administration. You told her something was wrong, but she didn't believe you. You told me this many years later. Yours. You dreamt of being a model. Mine. I split my face open, jumping from a train I hopped with the crew change that you gave me. I'd never model. Later, I embellished my tattooed text with a half-sleeve train emerging from a tunnel. Mine. You said my ass was big, and I still believe you. Ours. We slept with our hips together, holding hands. The year we met, my parents moved my family from the house where you first knew me, where my father answered the door our first time together and saw your mother standing on the other side of the screen and called her by name. We joked that they had been lovers. We joked or we wished. My mom just left. You were the closest thing I had to a sister. I knew your body. It is a little ridiculous, actually. Sorry. You were the closest thing I had to a sister. I knew your body like it was my body. I knew it as it was changing. I knew when you got your period before me because I could smell it, and because you told me about it, drew me pictures of it, told me everything you could about how the blood clotted, how it felt, how it tasted. I knew your breasts as they were changing into shapes I could hold in my hands. I saw your naked body so close to mine so many times in the daylight and the darkness and the water and the moon. I saw you pee. I saw your pubic hair changing color. I saw your face getting older. I loved you when you grabbed me by the sides of my head and smelled my hair. I do that to my husband now. You do that to your husband now and to your children. You loved me like a child and a sister and a mother. You were my twin. I loved you when you held my hand expecting that I would hold yours back, and I did. We ran down the streets of my neighborhood, prepubescent, wearing nothing but skin, hiding behind trash cans when trucks turned their corners and caught us in spotlights. We climbed into other people's boats suspended from docks over dark water, hearing fish below hurl themselves into the air, smacking down on the surface. I lost my virginity so soon after you because of you. You were the first one I told. I wrote you a letter the day it happened and drew you pictures wanting you to see. My mother found it and put me on the pill. I lied and said that I loved him. He was just some boy. When your mother finally earned enough to move you into the condo, we held on to the sides of your hot tub and fucked the jets with our knees above the water. It was there that you met your daughter's father, lying by the side of the pool in the sticky sun, turning brown the way I never could. You wanted to catch his eye, and it worked. You knew you were pregnant as soon as you stood from the grass where you lay with your daughter's father. I see you walking your bicycles back to the duplex you shared with him then, with its haunted Murphy bed and its daisy-colored sunroom, the fear in your face, and the hexagonal sidewalk sections beneath you, and this is something you said to me that I believe. Your mother slid down the laundry chute of a foster home on sheets of waxed paper. She described the sound of climbing back up, boom, boom. We were teenagers when she gave you to the state because you couldn't be trusted with her or with yourself. There were times I knew you hated her. You'd come home to her on the recliner, corpse-like, TV on the floor, drink in hand, misty cigarettes on the particle board table, overweight, hair dyed red, made up, drunk. She called me to complain about you. Did you know that? She took your daughter when you were coked up and homeless and could no longer protect her. You couldn't even protect yourself. I think of the midnight you said you were going to break into your abandoned childhood home because it was somewhere to sleep. When you lived in that house, your bedroom was a converted living room. A door led from your room to the front of the house. You both entered from the back. A boy lived in your neighborhood, your first love, the first male since your father to touch your bare skin. You were 7 in the attic of another boy's house, and there were 2 others there. You told me this story. And nearby, the day we went exploring in the ruins of an abandoned house, I leapt from one wooden plank to another and landed on a rusty nail and cried. We were 10. I was wearing white Keds and bobby socks. By the time we got back to your house, the heel of my shoe was red and I was leaning on you heavy. Your mother shook her head as she called my mother. I remember your house was blue. You moved out of it the year after I met you, into the low-rent apartment across from the Bosnian children you found annoying even though they were refugees from genocide. You came home alone after school and ate cheese quesadillas from the microwave, a survival technique I found strange until later when I first heard you say the word poor. You turned 12. At your party, a man passed us and returned to where we chased one another on the grass. We hid from him behind a vined white lattice, giggling at the fact of his maleness. You broke loose from us, screaming, waving something above your head. A sun hat? You knew to be afraid. I walked as far down the driveway as my parents' cordless phone allowed me the night when you said you were going away. All the houses slept with their eyes open, and the bush by our garage smelled of jasmine, and I was trying to cry, but I couldn't, so I had to pretend. I pretended other times with you. I pretended we were still best friends when we got our tattoos. I pretended to take your side when my father fired you after giving you a job when you were desperate. I pretended sympathy when you told me you wanted to kill yourself. Your daughter was 3. How could you? I pretended to trust you many times when I didn't, and you shouldn't have trusted me either. What you were wearing on the day we came to pick you up at the girls' home, my parents and I, and nobody asked us our names or made us sign things or even saw you leaving. A coral-colored vintage dress cinched at the waist, a necklace that hung between your breasts. You had gained weight from the Paxil and you called the dress your Marilyn. You wore, maybe, plastic flip-flops and anklets, short hair, and I wondered if you wished they cared more, the people at the home. I wondered who had cared about you other than me. You can love someone without trusting her. You know this better than I do. I loved you completely. I love how you think water can feel things. I love that you always smell of sage. I love that you decoupaged your coffee table. I love how you think you're punk rock, even now. You were diagnosed, but you were never crazy. You were caught between the fear of leaving your mother and the fear of staying. Caught in the horror of being complicit in your endangerment every time she asked you to fix her a drink. Caught in the need to protect her, though she didn't protect you. Caught between the habit of being a child, obedient, and the need to rebel as a woman. It's not your fault you couldn't escape. There was so much I didn't know about you then, and I'm angry with you for thinking that I did. I'm angry with myself for failing to see it, for being naive for so long. I hurt you. Twice you ran to Miami. First when you fled that home with another girl who you told me looked like a pixie, and I wonder if that was true. Second, when you awoke in a hotel shower covered in blood, with your daughter half a state away and no way to escape the room. I hope that was a lie. So I'll stop there for BFF. And then I'm just going to read a bit from the title essay, Sunshine State, which is about what was once the largest wild bird hospital in the country, which has since descended into scandal. So it opens with this. Characters in the following story are presenting their own versions of events and do not necessarily reflect the truth, which we may never know. Some names have been changed to protect anonymity. The Suncoast Seabird Sanctuary sits hidden behind a bank of palms on a curve in Gulf Boulevard, which follows a strip of barrier islands from the top to the bottom of Pinellas County, Florida. The curve marks the place where Reddington Shores stops and Indian Shores begins. Pastel-colored luxury hotels and salty stilt houses flank the sanctuary, and a giant fiberglass pelican marks its entrance, its paint chipped and faded from the sun. Next to the pelican, a rainbow flag reads, "Open." Growing up in Pinellas County, I visited the sanctuary many times as a child. I remembered it being a place of encounters with strange species, with wild instincts. Standing in the faintly shit-scented gift shop on my first day as a volunteer, I told the coordinator, Adrienne Badel, that I'd returned to write about it. I'd be working at the sanctuary for 6 weeks doing research. "Are you a journalist?" she asked. "I'm more of a memoirist." Adrienne had hair the color of wet sand and a face that looked perpetually confused. I filled out an application and handed it to her. We looked at each other. "There have been bad things written about us in the paper," she said. I thought I'd write an essay about birds. In a lightly magical way, I began to notice them all around me. A few weeks before, I'd found a fledgling pigeon on a sidewalk in my Brooklyn neighborhood. Its feathers were coming in, and it couldn't yet fly, and I'd feared for its safety on the busy sidewalk, unable to find its nest. I brought it to a bird hospital on the Upper East Side. In the examining room, a veterinarian fished trichomoniasis buildup out of its throat with a cotton swab on an orangewood stick, and in the custom of the shelter, named the fledgling Sarah. I felt I was on the trail of something ancient. I felt I was hunting something powerful and primal. The Suncoast Seabird Sanctuary was founded in 1971 when Ralph Heath, a newly graduated pre-med zoology student on his way to do some Christmas shopping, brought home a cormorant he'd found dragging a broken wing in the side of Gulf Boulevard. At the time, Ralph was living with his wife Linda, and his parents in his robin's egg-colored childhood home, which later became and remains the sanctuary office. With the help of a local veterinarian, Ralph and his father nursed the bird back to health, named it Maynard, and let it live in their front yard. Soon after, a local bait fisherman caught wind of their success and brought them an injured gull. Then the postman left a bird on their doorstep. Then birds began arriving outside their front door every day. Ralph recounts the story in Flying Free 2, a low-budget video history of the sanctuary, an experiment in non-traditional camera angles, somehow co-starring local newscaster Bill Murphy. Like old friends, clad in matching safari shirts, the two sit across from each other on wood pilings inside the brown pelican enclosure and engage in what sounds like a casually over-rehearsed conversation about Ralph's history. "Ralph, let's talk a bit about someone who had such an impression on you in the direction of your life," says Bill, looking straight into the camera. "Talk a little bit about your dad." "My father was a very unusual doctor," Ralph replies, as if hearing the question for the first time. He was an MD, not a veterinarian, but he was probably the best surgeon Tampa ever had. He could put anything with tissue back together. Now in his 70s, Ralph has lived on Sanctuary property for more than 50 years. His house is across the street from Sanctuary office and overlooks the Gulf of Mexico. He lives on the bottom floor. The first time I saw him, Ralph was wandering down the dirt pathway in front of the hospital, shirtless and in flip-flops, speaking into a flip phone saying, "We haven't really had money to do that." I'd assumed he'd been removed as the Sanctuary's director, having followed up on Adrian's recommended readings. Ralph had been in the news a lot over the last decade, for all the wrong reasons. So I asked another volunteer, an older, short-haired woman who this slovenly, beer-gutted man was, as he was seeming to be making decisions. Just moments before, she had offered to dissect an owl pellet for me, so I decided she was friendly. "That's the founder of the Sanctuary, Ralph Heath," she said. "He's a very strange man." "So he's here a lot?" I said. More than we want him to be." I watched Ralph shuffle toward the office on his phone. His hair was thin and uncombed, and patches of scabs and scars dotted his bare skin. He paused in front of the vacant visitor information counter to look at a night heron perched on the roof like a gargoyle. The bird stared back down at him. "What does he do?" I asked. Nothing. He drinks a lot, if I had to guess. "So if you see Ralph Heath, founder of the Sanctuary, in the newspaper," she concluded, "you'll know to stay away." Okay, I'm going to flip forward a little bit. So, lots of shit went down, and there was like a massive walk-off, like 40 employees quit all on the same day because they hadn't been paid in weeks. And Ralph was, he owed the IRS. The IRS was suing him for like tens of thousands of dollars in payroll tax and various other things. He's also being sued by someone for selling the same Corvette to two different people. And then in the next scene, you're going to meet Greg and Kelly, who Greg was the general manager of the Seabird Sanctuary at the time, and Kelly ran the office. She was the office manager, but she also nursed. She's a registered nurse, and she nursed Ralph's mother until she died at the age of 104. And she had just died a couple of years before I entered the scene here. So that's who Greg and Kelly are. They're like very central to the Sun Coast Seabird Sanctuary family. And in this scene, this takes place at a beach bar where Ralph's best friend, Jimbo, who I had met the day before, who's in a beach band, like a band that plays at beach bars around, of which there are lots in this area. But anyway, so I heard that he was playing that night, and I figured Ralph would be there, so I decided to go, because I wanted to find out what the fuck was going on. Ralph arrived at the Gulfport Beach Bar after Jimbo's set ended, just as everyone was making their way to the bar next door to hear another musician. He wore a dirty white t-shirt with a hole in the sleeve, khaki shorts, and flip-flops, and sat alone on a bar stool facing the stage. Up close, he looked almost childlike. He has an innocent smile and clear, unassuming eyes. The thick head of hair from the Doers ad has gone almost bald. He has a big round belly, and his face is bloated and sun-spotted. I introduced myself as a new volunteer and told him I was writing about the sanctuary. As we talked, I remembered something Greg and Kelly had told me earlier. Ralph refuses to believe what people say about him is true. The things people write in the paper are all lies, he insists. He will prove them all wrong. The media, as you well know, likes sensationalism, he would explain to me later. Jimbo had echoed Greg and Kelly's sentiment. He has to win, he says. Ralph's need to win doesn't manifest as anger. He's actually rather blithe, almost charming. Call it stubborn naivete, perhaps. Willful self-deceit. He has a heart of pure gold, and it seems to be true. He's for the birds. I asked Ralph if he kept any birds at home. He replied that he had 100 pigeons. Then he told me about the warehouse on Starkey Road, his real joy, where he keeps the other 600 birds. Chickens and parrots, pelicans and doves, pigeons, turtles, furniture, a few cars. He's working on a grant to fix the company yacht. Then he told me something his father had told him when he was a child, a basic principle he'd carried throughout his life. If an animal doesn't have to die, it shouldn't die. At the end of our conversation, Ralph told me I could call him after the weekend. On the way home, I drove by the warehouse. The gate was closed, but I pulled into the driveway and stood on the pavement, imagining the inside. Were the birds loose and flying around, or were they in cages? Who cleaned this place every day or every week? Behind the building, live oaks and shrubs crept up to the walls and tangled together. How much money had been poured into building and maintaining the warehouse while the sanctuary couldn't pay its bills? Here, I thought, standing in the darkness, was the answer to my question. Here's why so many people turned on Ralph. That was Thursday. On Monday, I awoke to a thunderstorm. Morning storms in Florida are a special kind of sign, a reminder that you're trespassing on Mother Nature's turf, that everything you know could be washed away in an instant. The thunder that morning had made its way into my dreams, drawing me out of sleep. I lay in bed watching lightning flashes across my ceiling, knowing something was wrong. I got up and called Ralph. "I can't talk now," he said. He sounded frantic. "We got a lot of baby birds in the hospital last night." It was baby bird season, this was true, and it was also true that baby birds could be blown from their nests by the storm. The hospital tended to get a few more birds than usual on stormy mornings, but certainly not a catastrophic number as Ralph's tone suggested. The birds were not the issue. He was avoiding me. I asked when I should call him back. "I'll call you," he said, and hung up on me. I sipped my coffee. Greg had given me his phone number the night at the beach bar, telling me Greg had given me his number that night at the beach bar, telling me we'd talk more when we could be alone. He and Kelly had wanted to divulge things, to expose some goings-on at the sanctuary under cover of anonymity. I called Greg, no answer. I texted, no reply. By the time I arrived at the sanctuary that afternoon, the storm had cleared and the heat had risen from the dirt walkways into a thick steam. I found Shelley leaving the indoor hospital and asked about baby birds. I'd heard they'd gotten a lot that morning, I said. "Not really," she said, looking confused. I thanked her and continued on toward the office. Outside, Greg was smoking a cigarette, as if nothing was going on, as if he hadn't ignored my call that morning. I bummed a cigarette, acting casual, and took a drag. I pointed across the street at Ralph's house. "So, that's his?" I asked, as if I didn't already know. "Yup," he responded. "Uh-huh." We smoked. "Did I miss a call from you this morning?" he asked. "You did." "My phone died." "Oh, no problem." We smoked. "I won't know anything until Wednesday," he said finally. I left this mysterious comment hanging in the air between us. We finished our cigarettes and dropped them on the ground where, looking back, any number of birds could have eaten them. I followed him inside the office like I was allowed to be there, and found Jimbo sitting on a couch by the door, holding a glass filled with, I later ascertained, a lot of vodka. Outside, moments later, Jimbo told me everything. Ralph's sons were dissolving his association with the sanctuary. "They want to keep it alive, and they know it won't stay alive with him involved," he said. I appreciated this anthropomorphizing of the sanctuary as if it were a living thing in need of immediate care. Knowing what I did about the sanctuary's troubles over the last few years, most of which could be traced back to Ralph, I wasn't surprised to hear of this development, but I had a feeling there was more to it than money troubles. "He's so committed to winning," Jimbo continued. "He says it's for the birds, but the birds are suffering." It wasn't clear whether he was referring to the birds at the sanctuary or the birds in Ralph's house and the warehouse, or even to birds in general that needed the sanctuary. When Jimbo mentioned that he'd moved in with Ralph to help him clean up his life, I asked him about the birds in Ralph's house. It sat a few hundred feet away from us, and I pictured them inside there now, some caged and some not, some falling in love, as Ralph had described at the beach bar, some sick and waiting to die until he returned home, as he told me on the phone a few days later. From outside, the building looked so small I couldn't imagine how he'd fit 100 birds inside it. Jimbo answered gravely. "Some don't need to be there, some are alive only because they're there, and some shouldn't be alive." Periodically during our conversation, Jimbo would ask me to turn off my recorder so that he could speak candidly, and I would oblige, turning it back on when he signaled it was okay. Deeper into our conversation, he decided for convenience to leave it on. "I'm just going to trust you," he told me, though I wasn't sure by what standard I should be trusted. I said I knew he wouldn't be telling me any of this if he didn't care. Let me be clear about this. I would take a non-fatal bullet for him, he said. I would really have to think about a fatal one, because he's old and he's really on the wrong path. He thought about this for a second. "I would jump in front of one only if it wouldn't kill me," he clarified. "I would, because his heart is pure." I said I believed him. This was an emotional conversation for Jimbo. He asked me many times while we talked if I was comfortable with him crying, and I assured him I was, that I cry all the time. I'm an artist, like him. He appreciated me opening up to him. "I'm touched that I'm actually able to be this comfortable," he said. "I'm kind of freaking out. Sometimes I imagine I'm a macho man." "I knew better from the start," I said. "He's got birds up there that are so warped," he said, shaking his head. "But they're breathing, And I'm glad about some of them. Some of them should probably be euthanized. But to pull up your flooring so that birds can shit on the floor without destroying something is a little over the limit as far as I'm concerned. I mentioned to Jimbo what Ralph had told me at the bar, that he couldn't let an animal die if he knew it could live. I watched him cry for 72 hours straight over Snowball dying, Jimbo said. That was a pigeon, and he didn't shed a tear for his mother. We looked at each other. Finally, I ventured, do you think his mother's death was just too much for him? No, I think he just doesn't value human life as much as bird life, he said. I sat for a minute looking at Ralph's house. He really is committed to birds. Greg walked by, startling Jimbo. Right that Ralph's an asshole and an idiot, Greg yelled over his shoulder. Jimbo was upset. We've been expressing that differently, he said. Wow, he apologized. There's some animosity flying around, I said in my most understanding tone. Jimbo agreed. The night before, he'd gone out to dinner with Ralph's sons to talk about what should be done with the sanctuary. Beatrice, Ralph's ex-wife, who was a member of she is part of the Anheuser-Busch family, but they were married for a couple of years and they had 3 sons together and then they divorced because Ralph wouldn't move back to St. Louis with her because he couldn't leave the birds. There's some animosity flying around, I said in my most understanding tone. Jimbo agreed. The night before, he'd gone out to dinner with Ralph's sons to talk about what should be done with the sanctuary. Beatrice had joined via phone. The boys had put their foot down. She was on the phone saying, we can let Poppy have a title, or we can call him associate, vice president, director, which would have made him happy. And Andrew went, fuck no. If he has anything to do with this place, it's going to fail. And I'm here in the middle, you know, because I really care about him. Kelly, are you mad at me? He said as Kelly walked by. No, she said. See, he turned back to me. I care too much what people think. It's because my parents never cared about me. That's why he was so protective of Ralph's sons, he explained. Growing up, the boys split their time between Florida and the Von Gontard Estate Oxbow Farm in Virginia. Their stepfather, Audie Sr., adopted them, and they took his name, erasing any public association they had with Ralph. Even back then, Ralph spent most of his time at the warehouse, so the boys had an au pair or went with him to the warehouse when they were in town. But they were lonely and hated the warehouse, Jimbo said. He was around to help them have a normal life. I raised those boys, he told me. They came to me with, please save us from the warehouse, and Andy said, take us out, take us to the beach, take us to something, do something. I became their guide, Jimbo said. At Oxbow, Audie Sr. made the boys work. They'd get up at 5 in the morning and work all day doing manual labor, and they earned money doing it. It taught them work ethic, taught them how to make $1 or a few million the right way. Now in their 30s, the boys have amassed impressive resumes. Andrew is a commercial airline pilot based in St. Louis and has a law degree and is making his way toward being a judge. In Dallas, Alex and Peter, along with their stepbrother Adelbert Audie Von Gontard IV, recently launched an upscale bar called the Eberhard, as well as a dating app called Courting, which has drawn the interest of several major investors, including venture capitalist Mark Cuban. And the twins, Jimbo said, this is where the huge fear is going on here right now. The twins are in the real estate business of buying failing properties and tearing them apart and making money, he sniffled. That's what's making this difficult. Thank you.
Great reading, Sarah.
Thanks, Amy.
Is this on? Yeah, okay. I actually really briefly wanted to tell the story of, I don't know if I fully have this right, but Sarah and I went to the new school together. And yeah, we got some new school people here. And we had a class together and we didn't really talk to each other, but Sarah would sometimes sit near me and she'd say things that were really smart, really fast, and then fall silent. And then one day at the end of class, she just was like, I have this toy car. She just turned to me and was like, I have this toy car, do you want it? And I was like, sure. And then I don't think we spoke to each other again for 3 years. Is that what happened?
It was, well, I got that car here, actually, because I was running the children's section, and so I was the toy buyer.
Oh, it's
and
almost
it
as
was
if we planned this.
I would get samples sometimes, and I would just bring them home. But then, my apartment, I don't have children, but my apartment just filled up with toys, and I was like, I have to get rid of this somehow. But I can't just throw them away either. So yeah, I just happened to have a little wooden. Was it green?
It was just wood. I still have it in my box of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it was just a little wooden car.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
That's how
Okay.
we became friends.
Well, this book is wonderful, and obviously it just has like a huge span of different kinds of writing. But we were talking a little bit about this before, and I think the first essay is a really good example of how much like the body is in this book.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking, like, if Florida was a body, like, how would you describe it?
Oh my god. No.
Yeah.
People describe it.
I don't know. I mean, well, one of the things I was thinking about in writing this collection was to what extent we can heal ourselves
Yeah.
and heal the people around us. So sickness, there's a lot of sickness in the book. Sicknesses of different kinds, and social sicknesses, and social sickness, mental illness, physical illness, and so yeah, that was absolutely something that I was thinking about. And there's a certain degree to which, as a writer, you have to kind of recognize your own limitations as you're writing a book like this, because because I'm using this, but me, because I was, I was incapable of saving people from certain adverse situations, even as I was writing about them. But yeah, it was absolutely something that I was thinking about here.
What do you think you were attempting to heal for yourself?
I don't know. I mean, like when I was writing BFF, that was a relationship that I had hung on to for, we stopped speaking, and I couldn't write shortly after I got married, which was in 2011, and then I couldn't write the story for like 3 years. And I think it was just, and I wrote it really as a matter of necessity, because I had been, I found myself, like, I was in therapy at the time, and I found myself just like talking about, I was surprised by how much I had to talk about this relationship, even though I had kind of written this person off and decided that I was cutting all ties. But and then just to, and even in talking about it with my therapist, I found like there was really no, it was really hard to tell the story of it, because it had, first of all, because the relationship had gone on for so long, and also because it was just so complicated. Like, there were so many nonverbal things that passed between us, and, and like betrayals that, in the sense that a betrayal is like, happens between two people who have defined their own relationship, but like betrayals that if I tried to explain them to another person would not make any sense, So that was something that I was grappling with, but also, looking at the state of Florida as a character, some of the ills that I was trying to not heal from personally, but, understand were, the kind of extreme economic differences that you encounter in the population, and also looking at the history of domestic violence legislation in the state and how they, So yeah, speaking to like the issue of social ills, like that was something that I was really thinking about, and not necessarily like I wasn't trying to heal personally from that, but really trying to understand how it has shaped how it has shaped Florida as a place and the people there, and my own story.
Yeah, I wanted to actually go back to BFF, because I remember, I think that was the first essay in this book that I saw, because it was an earlier essay, and I remember seeing an earlier draft of it, and it was so touching to read it in the arc that I got, because I remember you felt kind of, there was a distance in those early drafts. It was like hard to get into the vulnerability of that friendship, and there's like so much there now, and I think you capture it in a way that is so powerful. And I wanted to read just the end of it, because it seems like related to what you're talking about, just like the last lines, and sort of get your take on it.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to read the entire book. I love this. I open up this time so I can feel all the other time around it. I can see it in sharp focus, a difference of this or that, the light or the dark. I am choosing the light. In the dark, hurt is pushed to the perimeter and stretched. It is variegated, bold, a bright pink scar. In the light, I can love you the way I want to, the way you deserve. I hope you're happy. Which is incredible. But I also, I wonder, do you feel like that's what you've done? Do you feel like you've brought things into the light? Do you feel like you've healed things, or do you feel like things are in a process?
Yeah, I've been, because I'm in the process of, I just recently separated from my long-term partner, so I'm in counseling now, and I've gone to 3 sessions, and the second session was really difficult because we like kind of directly confronted a lot of what happened during this relationship, and so like a couple of days after that were really hard. But the last session she was like, we don't have to do that every time, like we don't have to like, you know, we don't have to look at these difficult memories every time, you know, we can learn to cope with them and we don't have to directly look at the trauma. And I think that's what I was getting at in that passage too, that like, you know, I'm choosing not to revisit all of the like painful, you know, shit that transpired between us. It's all kind of, not all of it, I mean there's so much, but like 17 years, but like in that I would say these are the most kind of, what appears in the essay, those are the rawest, most complex, most ambiguous memories that I have of this person. So so now that it's there, you know, when I think about this relationship, I don't have to think about that necessarily, you know, or if I do, it's kind of, it appears in my memory as the image that I've created in this piece of writing, rather than, you know, it's in its raw form.
I think that's an interesting thing about writing too, is that it kind of fucks with your memories of things completely.
It really
and
does.
it fucks with your sense of time, and you create this solidified thing that's maybe somewhat, I mean it's true and it's false in other ways. Do you feel like, I wondered with the more journalistic pieces, how you manage that, because it's your perspective telling these incredibly complex stories and also complex recountings of the politics and history of all of these places. So how did you kind of work with that?
Well, I had to decide how much I wanted to include myself in those more journalistic pieces. Because if I appear as a character, then it's more evident that what is being reported on is filtered through my point of view. It's always filtered through the writer's point of view, but you know, I think it makes a huge difference to the reader how, you know, like kind of how obvious you make that, you know, your trustworthiness is really at stake. Because, you know, as a narrator, you know, your perspective is, you know, it's kind of not skewing the fact, but shaping the facts, you know. So in like Sunshine State, for example, I'm there as a character, and as and like significantly as an interloper, somebody who's not immediately trusted in that situation, and I had to earn people's trust a lot of times. And there were people who came to me and really wanted to tell me their stories, but there were others who, even after they came to me and said, we have things to tell you, were, you know, they kind of, it seemed to like second guess themselves, and, you know, then they like, you know, didn't, like Greg did, like didn't answer my phone calls, you know, when I called, or like, you know, maybe he had second thoughts about giving me this really, you know, necessary information. So then I had to like work even harder to earn their trust or kind of force my way in. But like in the Mayor of Williams Park, for example, like I'm dealing with it's an essay about homelessness in the state of Florida, and I said this in an interview recently, but like as a young, able-bodied, middle-class white woman, I am the least important person in an essay about homelessness, which disproportionately affects people of color, single mothers, people with mental illness, you know, children, people with mental or physical disabilities. And so like it was not only not important to know what I think of this situation, it was really important for me to take a back seat in that story and let the facts speak for themselves, which they do very well on their own.
Yeah, I was curious, did you stay in contact with GW, who's the main character in that essay?
I did, and I heard from him, GW is interesting. I sent him a finished copy of the book. Well, at first I talked to him a lot while I was writing the essay. I was there for 6 weeks doing research for the book, and then I went back for 2 more research trips of a couple of weeks at a time. And then while I was writing the essay, we were in touch. And then when I finished the draft, I sent him the first draft of the essay, and we had a couple of conversations about about what kind of information he felt comfortable sharing, and how he. This is hard to navigate because as a journalist, I have to make my own choices regarding how I portray, like how my characters are depicted, you know.
Right.
But because he's important to me, and he's a friend of mine, I wanted him to be comfortable with it. So it's a fine line that I have to walk there. So, because there's a lot of sensitive information that's revealed in that essay too, you know, about his past and about his life today. So, yeah, but then I sent him a finished copy I sent him a galley, and then
I
sent him a galley? I think so.
I think so, yeah.
I think so. And then we sent him a finished copy of the book, and when he read the finished copy of the book, which is it's now out in the world, like nothing can be done, he texted me the other day and he was like, "You ruined my life, like, I can't believe you wrote about my relapse." And he didn't say relapse, but I knew that he was talking about, I wrote about his relapse, which he knew that I was going to do. That he was really upset about it, and you read an early draft too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then, so I was like, well, you know, you were on the record, like you knew that I was writing about you, you read an early draft of this essay, like you knew that I was writing about this. And then we like made plans to talk, but after a couple of days, I was really happy this happened recently, but after a couple of days he texted me again and said, "I'm really proud to know you, like thank you for writing about me, you know, like, yeah." So it was, but it can be really uncomfortable to read about yourself, especially the, you know, less savory, right? Right, Mom and Dad? But yeah, so yeah, we're still in touch and like, yeah, we're on good terms now. I felt really bad, but like what can be done? I mean, you know, he was aware he had plenty of time, so to ask that those things not be included, which even at that point, you know, like he talked to me when I was doing research, talked to me on the record, told me to write about his relapse, said this is the most honest thing you can do, you should write about this. So, you know, I think at a certain point, even if he had said, "I don't want you to include that," I would have to make a really tough decision. Like I might have still included that, you know, because it's the best version of the story, and he did give me permission, you know, initially. And I am writing the story in the role of a journalist, so, you know, it's like, yeah, it's a fine line to walk.
Yeah, I mean, your parents are in the front row.
Hey.
How was it writing about your family? Was that easier or harder or?
No, I would say, easier or harder. I don't know.
Or different?
They gave me a lot of their time. And and a lot of information and a lot of freedom to write what I felt was true and honest. So yeah, I was very grateful for that. It's weird because I even think like it's so hard to do somebody that I know so well, or these people that I know so well. It's really hard to write them as characters, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, I know GW, he's my friend, but I don't know him so intimately. He didn't raise me. So, yeah, it's hard to, I don't know that I fully captured you guys. I think I captured you at a certain period, maybe, but, yeah. How do you feel about it?
We're here.
They did show up, so.
Yeah, they're here. They seem okay. What's the hardest? I mean, maybe hardest isn't the right word, but I think you also do such a good job of taking on so many different kinds of nonfiction narrative voices. But what do you find? What was the easiest to slip into, or what was the essays that you wrote earlier?
Yeah, well, memoir is always the easiest for me.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, journalism is fun. I really like doing research, and I like finding creative ways to incorporate data into my prose. And, interesting, I could have easily fallen into like a really academic tone, or I've read some really super dry historical texts while I was writing this book, and I really wanted to avoid that voice and find a way to make this information interesting, which means leaving a lot of it out too. But memoir is always more fun to me. It's just it just comes really naturally. I think because like there's a little thrill that I get when I say something kind of shocking in a piece of memoir,
Yeah, I do.
Right. So I don't know. Yeah, it's fun, and it changes me. I can feel myself changing as I'm writing memoir. Less so when I'm writing journalism. I think it's important for a writer to kind of like reach far outside of herself and engage with the world at large. but the memoir kind of like I think laced all of that other work together.
Do you think that you could have written, I mean, Binary Star has a lot of sort of nonfiction elements to it. Do you think you could have written this kind of book and gone so far outside of yourself if you hadn't written that first? And maybe you can't even ask yourself that question, but...
I mean, I don't think so,
Yeah.
because I didn't know that I could write a book until I wrote Binary Star.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and even as I was writing it, I was like, this is so weird, no one's going to publish this, you know? Yeah, but it definitely gave me permission to work on some, you know, a longer book.
Yeah.
Yeah, it showed me that I could actually do it.
How did you decide on the actual structure of the essays, like the order of everything?
Yeah.
It flows well in this way that I can't track, like, I can't figure out what the structure is, it just like seamlessly moves.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know what the order would be until the very end, and my editor and I went back and forth about that a couple of times, and suggested some different orders for the essays, and I think at one point I was going to pair them in like couplets or something, like BFF and Before, which are now the first and the last essays in the book. They were going to be together, the first two essays in the book, and then I think like Mother, Father, God and Going Diamond were going to be paired because they both really blended memoir with journalism. And then the two pieces of more straightforward journalism were going to be paired together. And there were other iterations that we kind of tried because different essays talk to each other across the text. So I kind of wondered if we should bring those closer together or not. But in the end, and then ultimately we decided just to wait until the very end to decide in what order they would appear. And then actually, like I think a few days before I submitted the manuscript, I was like, "Here's the order," and like sent it to her, and she said, "Yeah, that's it." And the way that what we decided was that it opens out with BFF, which I think structurally and stylistically is most similar to Binary Star. So somebody coming to this book who has read Binary Star in the past would kind of not be shocked by the extreme difference in style. And then after that, it moves roughly in chronological order. So it begins with right after BFF is my baptism, and then towards the end of the book is Rabbit, is the second to last essay, which is about death. And then the last essay moves. It's written like kind of like a poem, and it moves in reverse chronological order through my life, telling through every animal that I've ever formed an emotional relationship with in my life. And actually, I did an interview this morning, and the person who was interviewing me said, it kind of reminds me of when somebody is dying, and they their whole life flashes before their eyes, and it goes back to the start, like to the moment of. It's the first animal I ever met, which was my cat Phoenix, which is the last word of the book is Phoenix. Which I don't know, I like this idea of rebirth, death and rebirth, appearing at the very end. So that's how we landed on the structure, is that it moves more or less in chronological order after the first essay. Although some of it is overlapping, so you would not necessarily know that, but yeah.
I know you were doing a lot of different kinds of research for this book, but what books were you reading for pleasure, like, during this time?
God, I can't remember what it's called. I went to this, like, kind of mystical bookstore in Seattle at one point, and I picked up, it's a book called Kinship with All Life. It's so silly, but it's just a series of, and it's kind of once, now that you know a little bit about Sunshine State, you might understand why this spoke to me. But it was written, I had just finished reading Susan Orlean's biography of Rin Tin Tin, and it's actually so fascinating. But I just finished reading that, and in that book she mentions, this book, Kinship with All Life, where that tells the story of Strongheart, who was like a forebear of Rin Tin Tin, one of the first animal, like, what is that dog breed, Rin Tin Tin? German Shepherd. He was one of the first German Shepherds. There's actually a legacy in America of German Shepherds starring in films. Maybe you don't know this, but Strongheart was a forebear of Rin Tin Tin, and in the Rin Tin Tin biography, Susan Orlean mentions Kinship with All Life, where this writer had actually dog sat Strongheart for like a month or something, and wrote this essay about it. And he also talks about forming relationships with like a housefly and various other animals. So it's written like, it's so, I mean, it's just, yeah, it's the kind of thing that you would like pick up on the toilet, like, you know, and read like 3 pages of it, but I was really taken with it, just because it kind of, silly as it was, like it spoke to the kind of thing that I was exploring at the time, like these, you know, relationships that are so hard, with animals specifically, that are so hard to put your finger on, like what is this commerce that we're actually, like how are we actually communicating, is it real, you know? Yeah. So that's one thing that I was reading for fun at the time. But I wish I wasn't, like, in general, wasn't reading a lot of books for fun at the time. Or I wouldn't say they were, like, recreational reading. I was reading, like, obscure historical texts and, like, you know, things that, like, I read a bunch of books from the New Thought movement or about the New Thought movement. I was reading a lot of Michigan local news because I was writing about Amway. Yeah, like, stuff like that. I was reading a lot of, like, government reports about homelessness. Also, yeah. I mean, and that's, so I can't say that I was reading recreationally, but that was actually fun reading because I was using it and I was really interested, fascinated with these topics, but yeah.
We both collage
Yeah.
and have collage together,
Yeah.
which is such a joy. But and I know that for me, like when I'm having a particularly hard time putting things into words, that's like a space to go to.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering what collage is for you, and if you collage when you were, I think you did, right, when you were writing Sunshine State?
Yeah, my collages at the time were like smaller.
Yeah, you were making like lots of like postcard size. Right?
Yeah, postcard size collages. Because I've only been like doing it for a couple of years now. Since I began doing it, like I had done visual art in the past, but like I got kind of serious about collage right before Binary Star came out because I was kickstarting the book tour, and I was making these little postcard-sized collages as like rewards for people who submitted to my Kickstarter, and then I just like over time was challenging myself to make them larger and larger, just to see if I could. But at the time when I was writing this, I was making, they were maybe a little larger than postcard size, but like most of them were about this big. Now they're like this big. But yeah, what is it to me? It's really like, so I write this monthly column also, and I make a collage for it every month, and like oftentimes what I'll do is write half of the column, get kind of stuck, and decide to make a collage that will go with it, because it kind of shows me what kinds of associations I'm making in my mind that I might not even realize are there, It's so hard to put, I mean, like, this is so stupid to say, but like, it's so hard to put feelings into words, like, or to know, even if you have a word for something, why do I feel this? Like, why do I feel this way? Even, like, recognizing that it's, like, my column is about my relationship with eating now, 10 years into recovery from anorexia, so, like, why do I have this feeling, and, like, as somebody who has had mental illness or like struggled with an addiction, like knowing what you're feeling and why you have a feeling are the most difficult things you can do. It's like sometimes just it seems impossible. So yeah, so making a collage shows me how I'm thinking sometimes when I don't have language for it, and and like I don't like to go into a collage with any kind of a plan. I really trust it's all about trusting my instincts. Like, this image calls out to me. It's almost like it has, when somebody, struggles with overeating, sometimes I forget what they call it, but they talk about, like, when they're walking into a supermarket, some foods have, like, a shine around them, and, like, or, like, they'll think of, they have a certain shine around them. So, and that's what I do in my collage, too. It's just, like, this thing is shiny for some reason, Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think there's also something comforting about taking pre-created images and putting them together. It's like it's not like drawing or painting. You're not taking nothing and making something. And that's like such a relief.
It's true. No, yeah, it's true. It's true. And like, I mean, the most like, I mean, these are images that like speak to us anyway on a subliminal level, so there is something in that, it is instructive in that way, like this, because I can say like, this image is calling out to me for some reason, but then I can actually look at the image and what it is, and I can dig into the reason having this kind of prefabricated image, like, well, this, like, I have one in progress right now in my apartment, and And I'm also looking for relationships between images too. Like if I use an image of a person and they're looking in some direction, to find an image of a person looking in the opposite direction, just automatically there's a relationship between those two images, you know? But yeah, I'm thinking a lot about color and shape also while I'm collaging. Like the one that I'm making right now is mostly black and white so far, but I also plan to incorporate a lot of red. And that's the most plan that I'll make. Like I'm feeling red, you know? Yeah, but also the one I'm making now has this very romantic image of a woman kind of like spreading her arms. And it's for my column this month, and I'm writing a lot about love and like these kind of idealistic ideas. That's a redundant phrase, but like this kind of idealism that, you know, like around love that like kind of I think stops us sometimes from actually finding it. And yeah, so I'm looking at this kind of idealistic image of a woman, like she's very exposed, like. I don't know, yeah. It's a very sexual but also very classic form, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh, you talk about
Collaging forever, I know. Yeah.
Really good. Maybe we'll take some questions from the audience, but I'll ask you this question because it's my favorite question to ask anyone that I interview. What is your favorite thing about language?
What?
Only one thing.
Sound. That's the first thing that comes to mind. The sound of it. Yeah. I just finished this book by Jess Arndt called Large Animals, and the first 2 lines are so, I mean, she describes like the waves look like on the beach where they are, like look like uranium, you know, and like just like those two, the sounds of the wave and uranium together, I don't know what it is, but they just so resonate, you know, and it's an association that I would never make, or that, like, personally, I would never think to put those two things together, but just the sound of them together resonates so loudly, you know? And the image, too, how, like, I love how a word can describe one thing, but also depict another, you know? Yeah. I'm trying to think of a good example of that, because it has so much to do with context, but yeah, you know what I mean? Like,
I do.
Yeah. I love how one word can do 2 different things at once, or 3 or 4 or 5 different things at once.
Do you read your work out loud yourself?
Yeah, always.
Yeah,
always. Yeah.
Do you, when you're reading other people's work, and you are like, do you hear the sound even if you're reading to yourself, or do you have to? Because I think I don't hear the things unless I'm reading them out loud, and sometimes if I really like something, I'll just start reading it out loud.
Yeah, I love reading to people.
I love being read to as well. Let's make that a part of our lives.
Yeah, I love being read to, so. But yeah, I think sound is definitely my favorite thing. Yeah.
That's cool. Everybody always has a different answer.
What's your favorite thing about language? Oh my god, it's so
put me on the spot. Collaging is my favorite thing about language. My favorite thing about language, I think there is something about the way that it's just like the way that I learn the most about myself and other people. I don't know how I would understand things without language. I think a lot of people understand things with a lot of different methodologies, but I just think words mean everything to me.
Yeah.
About I just wouldn't be able to contextualize so much of my life.
I would know nothing about myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would be bad. I don't know, or maybe like.
I would be a terrible person because I would not have done any of the self-reflection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's also just like, I think also the best thing about books is it's the like one of the longest ways in which you are with people other than yourself. So I think it's such like an empathy building tool, and there's been so many studies about that. But like, you are like really living in somebody else, and you're like learning to listen and pay attention in this really deep way that I think is so valuable.
Yeah. Oh, listening. We should all do more of that.
Yeah. For sure. Well, so now we're gonna listen to you guys.
My dad has a question. Oh my god.
Maybe I'll pass the microphone.
Could you talk a little bit about your trip to Denver and the art project you did there? And I'm trying to remember if that was while you were still writing, or was it after you'd already finished the manuscript?
I had finished the manuscript at the end of July, or like mid-July, and then I went to Denver in November. And the project that I worked on there I was working with an art gallery that is also, it's an art gallery and studio space that has a residency that hooks up writers and artists from around the world with children who would otherwise not have art access because they come from at-risk communities or underprivileged communities. And the project that I was, so each of the artists that comes in for this residency chooses a topic and has to, at the end of 6 weeks, basically put together a gallery exhibition that is open to the public with this group of children that they've been assigned to. So I was working with like 6 or 7 children, or 8. They would kind of come in and out because it was a voluntary program. But we put together an art exhibition about homelessness in Denver that involved interviewing people who were experiencing homelessness or had experienced homelessness in Denver. And then they would edit these interviews into like...
I've already sent someone up.
Oh, okay, sorry. But they would edit these, so they conducted these interviews, they interviewed people who were experiencing homelessness or had experienced homelessness, and then they would edit these audio files into like listenable tracks that were paired with photographic portraits that the kids had shot also, and then there was a video interview that one of them edited together, and they put together, another feature of the exhibit was that they put together a sculpture made of found materials from former homeless encampments. So we went out and gathered these materials like tarps, cardboard boxes, police tape, a shopping cart, some golf clubs, lots of twine, and then they put it together. Their assignment was to build a pillow fortress, but with these found materials. So it actually turned into the idea was kind of like, this is not a sturdy structure, but a safe psychological space. So yeah, they also published like a street paper that could be sold so that people experiencing homelessness in Denver could make money from this paper they had published, which included art and writing by people who were homeless or had experienced homelessness. So yeah, that was a lot of the exhibition, but I've been writing about and working with and learning about homelessness for a long time now. It's just an interesting and really important topic to my mind. So yeah, I was glad to be able to do that. Thanks, Dad.
Oh, way in the back. Dan, you're gonna make me walk.
I got it.
Sarah, I was wondering, it's so interesting the mix of styles. It's like journalistic investigation and personal excavation, and it struck me that you must have encountered 2 very different types of discovery. And was there something in particular that surprised you? What surprised you the most? Was it something from the more internal excavation side of things, or a journalistic aspect?
Well, as far as surprises go, I would say the most surprising thing that I discovered while writing this book was Ralph's warehouse full of birds and other animals. So I guess that falls under the auspices of journalism, but I don't know. But I was actually really grateful that he didn't let me inside to see the warehouse firsthand, because I think I would have found that really disturbing. But yeah, that was I did not expect in any way when I entered that situation to become an investigative journalist. I really truly thought that I would be writing a memoir about this, about my interest in birds at the time. I just became really interested in bird species, and I was like, I want to learn about ornithology and like how do birds fly, how many species are there in Florida, and just like kind of the magic around birds. But then I ended up deeply excavating this person's disturbed psyche, so that was really surprising. Just de facto, like just the warehouse itself was a really shocking discovery. Not that I discovered it first, but that for me as a writer, that was a really shocking discovery and deeply disturbing, and it's still there. Yeah.
As you were reading tonight, I was thinking how I don't often reflect on that we're the United States, that there are state. I don't think about states and state problems so distinctly, and it seems like a lot of the essays bring up political issues, social issues that are dealt with differently in different states. And I was wondering if you, I guess, just kind of did that come up for you? Just how Florida's, approach to homelessness, for example, is dealt with differently in different parts of the United States, and kind of thinking about Florida in a political way.
Yeah, well, in doing the research about homelessness, I knew that I wanted to write about homelessness when that was one of the first essays that I had, in the book proposal, that essay, unlike some of the essays that appear in the book now, that essay did appear in the proposal. So I knew that I wanted to write about homelessness, but I didn't know until I started doing the research how Florida compared to other states in terms of the severity of homelessness in Florida. Like it's has the third highest number of homeless people in the country, or it did when I was writing the book. And so things like that, and that it actually is like, it does lead the country in that way. So I think it was important to me to situate Florida in, to contextualize it in comparison to other states in the country, but I didn't do deep research into other states necessarily, yeah. I mean, in that essay, I think I compare it to New York and California, but Kansas, I didn't look into Kansas or Louisiana, or, but yeah, in the sense that it's one of 50 states. It's it was important to me to contextualize it, yeah.
So you mentioned the in Sunshine State sort of getting a very different story out of that from the one that you had envisioned going down there for. And I'm curious about that idea in the more journalistic pieces. At what point did you realize what the story was that you were actually going to write, and what was it that made that take shape?
Well, with that essay, I knew pretty much right away because Adrian, the volunteer coordinator, was like, "Hey, there's a story here." And I was like, "Ding, ding, 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 ding." But with the mayor of Williams Park, I followed GW for 6 weeks, and the story emerged over the course of those 6 weeks. In other essays, I was telling, my family's story was the story that I was telling. So even though there's a lot of journalism, in Mother, Father, God, there's that's a lot of historical writing, but research in the sense, so that would fall under the umbrella of journalism in the sense that I was doing a lot of research. And that story, that was actually kind of hard because there's a lot that gets left out when you're writing nonfiction because it's not important to the story, even though it happened, But in that essay, it was really hard to decide. It was really hard to choose what to leave out because my parents were so gracious in giving me all of the records from the organization that I was writing about. Was called the Unity Progressive Council, and it was basically a fundamentalist movement within the marginal religious movement that I grew up in that occurred on the centennial of the movement's founding. So. And my dad was one of the founding members of this council, so he gave me all of the records, and my mom gave me a bunch, gave me her prayer journal and her, her class materials when you were taking a class at Emma Curtis Hopkins College. But yeah, so a lot of that stuff, board meeting minutes and shit like that, I had to cut that, and as I was, so asking, I think as a writer, what I'm always trying to do when I'm writing something like that is asking myself what's most fascinating to me about this research, because that's the story, and what was really interesting to me in that essay was the ways in which the fundamentalist movement kind of differed from the original aims of the movement, So that was really what I was trying to kind of demonstrate. But like in Going Diamond, for example, I was, there were kind of three different stories that I was telling. There was the story of my family's, participation in this movement, in this pyramid scheme. And then the story of the pyramid scheme, I'm not supposed to call it, it's a multi-level marketing corporation. And then the story of that corporation's, so there's that story, of that corporation from its origins until the present day. And then there's the kind of very short story of the tours that I was taking while I was writing the essay that I fictionalized, that came from real life, but that I was intermixing the material so much that I had to call it fiction. So yeah, so those are three, and I was looking, as I was structuring the essay, looking at the ways in which the different sections of the essay could resonate with each other when they were like kind of abutting, and that told me what the story should be. Like, what would it be important for me to reflect on right now, because I just said this thing, Yeah. So it really depends. It really depends on the essay. Yeah.
That's a wrap.
Yay!
If you guys would like a copy of the book signed, you may grab one down here and then pay for it upstairs on your way out. Thank you so much. Happy birthday.
Mom and Dad, have you guys officially met Amy? Amy,
I like, this is permanent, I hope.
Not yet.
Hi.
See, we did this one here too.
Oh, that's.
Pop in front of your mom and dad quickly for all your fans. Oh, of course. Yes, I know. There we go. Okay. Let me check to make sure I got the book. Oh, this is great. Thank you. You're like trying to move away from the camera. One more.
No, just me.
You have to start turning some books.
Try to get away from it. You go this way, you guys have choices on your side. Sarah can Great. Sure. Switch to the fast one. So there we go. That's a nice one.
Can we get a couple?
Of course, yeah. You can give me your email. There's that.
Well, you know what? You can reply.
I know. That's what I was thinking. That I have an email address from that. This is a nice one.
Nice section.
Hi, Adrian.
We're gonna go for ice cream. You're gonna go for ice cream with us, right?
I'm gonna head home.
You look tired. Are you tired?
So
What have you been doing?
Staying up in the middle of the night, hoping that Sunshine State will go smooth.
So then I'll have an email after.
It was great.
They'll make a folder.
Really nice.
Chris, either of you do Dropbox?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. Dropbox folder.
Yeah, you could send a link or something like that to my
I'm going to do one more backup with this. I should have done that. And Eric, could you move your head just a tiny bit? Yeah. Yeah, a tiny bit. Yeah, that's it. Oh, yeah, that last one. It's always good to have a bag. Sure. So it'll come from, I think so right now it says Yvonne Brooks. Oh, yeah.
Well, as soon as I get outside and get signal,
I know, that's what's nice about Gmail. It doesn't disappear away. They feel like I'm affected either. And when, because I have like AOL.
Take it on.
So
great seeing you.
But will you also get a couple others if you want to contact me? There's cups over there. And they're out really there. Are you heading out? Congratulations. Thank you. And they're out? She's in the world. We're so impressed with her. She's one of our first of many. She's like, yeah, are you coming for Okay, nice.
So basically, we're finishing a show about small television.
So it's like a new show on like what's the
It's a talk show. It's something that we have like in front of us.
Yes, and we talked about going out after the event next Friday. Yeah.
And Sarah was one of our
Very different.
so it's still probably